When people hear the words jail and prison, they often assume they mean the same thing. After all, both are places where people are locked up for breaking the law, right? Not exactly. The difference between jail and prison is much deeper than just semantics. It involves the length of the sentence, the severity of the crime, the facility's purpose, and the type of inmates. Let's break it down step by step to truly understand what sets jail apart from prison in the American justice system. The basic difference: time and crime. The most fundamental difference is this: jails are for short-term stays, while prisons are for long-term incarceration. Generally speaking, jails are used to hold individuals who are awaiting trial or serving sentences of less than 1 year, often for misdemeanors. Prisons, on the other hand, are designed for those who have been convicted of serious crimes, felonies, and are serving longer sentences that typically exceed 1 year. So if someone is caught shoplifting or driving under the influence and receives a short sentence, they're likely to go to jail. But if someone is convicted of armed robbery or homicide, they're headed to prison. Who runs these places? Local versus state and federal control. The key distinction in administration lies in who operates jails versus who manages prisons. And this fundamental difference shapes everything from the facility's purpose to its resources and protocols. Jails are typically overseen by local authorities, most commonly under the jurisdiction of a county sheriff's department or city law enforcement. Because their role is short-term confinement, jails primarily serve as holding centers for individuals who are awaiting trial, sentencing, or bail hearings. They also house those serving brief sentences, usually less than a year. Prisons, on the other hand, fall under the control of either the state or the federal government, depending on the nature of the crime and the length of the sentence. Each state has its own Department of Corrections, which manages a network of facilities designed for long-term incarceration. Federal prisons, run by the Federal Bureau of Prisons, BOP, hold inmates who have violated federal laws. This difference in oversight also affects the infrastructure, resources, and mission of each facility. Prisons tend to be more regimented, with defined security levels, minimum, medium, and maximum, and more robust funding that supports structured rehabilitation programs, job training, education, and mental health services. Jails, being more transitory, often lack these extensive programs and instead focus on intake, holding, and short-term custody. Their environments can feel more chaotic due to the constant churn of inmates entering and exiting. In essence, jails act as the temporary front lines of the criminal justice system, while prisons function as the long-term solution for convicted offenders, operated on a much broader and more institutionalized scale. The population inside. Who's locked up? In jail, you'll find a wide mix of people. Someone arrested last night for public intoxication, another person awaiting trial for a more serious charge, and maybe a few who've already been sentenced to less than a year. The population turns over frequently, which can create a chaotic environment. Prisons, by contrast, house people who've already been convicted and sentenced. Inmates tend to be there for months, years, or even a lifetime. This more stable population allows for different levels of classification: minimum, medium, maximum, and supermax security, based on the danger level of the inmates. Facility conditions and resources. Because jails are designed for short-term stays, they typically have fewer amenities and programs than prisons. Don't expect full-scale rehabilitation programs, college classes, or job training in most jails. The focus is on temporary holding. Prisons, on the other hand, often include educational services, vocational training, therapy programs, religious services, and structured schedules. This is partly because prisoners are staying much longer, and partly because there's a greater emphasis on rehabilitation, especially in lower security prisons. Security levels. Another key difference lies in security. Jails usually operate under general security, since their populations are constantly shifting and include a mix of minor and serious offenders. Prisons are highly structured and classified by security levels. Minimum security, dormitory-style housing, low risk; medium security, fenced perimeters, some restrictions; maximum security, secure cells, limited movement. Supermax, the highest security, often 23-hour solitary confinement. This level of classification isn't typically necessary or even possible in jails. Jail, the starting point of the justice system. Most people who are arrested for any crime first go to jail. Whether it's for a DUI, domestic disturbance, or a serious felony, the local jail is the first stop. They may be released on bail, held until trial, or plead guilty and serve their short sentence there. So in many ways, jail is the gateway to the criminal justice process. If a person is convicted and sentenced to over a year, they are transferred to a prison. Prisons, where long sentences are served. Once sentenced, especially for a felony, individuals are processed and transferred to a state or federal prison. State prisons hold people convicted of violating state laws, while federal prisons house those who break federal laws, like large-scale drug trafficking, tax evasion, or crossing state lines during a crime. Federal prisons often have better funding and conditions than state prisons, though they are generally more strict. State prisons vary widely by state in terms of quality, safety, and rehabilitation options. Life inside, jail versus prison. Daily life in jail is unpredictable. Inmates are coming and going. Court dates are looming, and the uncertainty of the trial adds tension. There are limited routines, and boredom or agitation is common. Some inmates may only stay for a few hours or days. Prison life, while harsh, can be more structured. Inmates usually have daily routines, work assignments, recreation, education, or rehabilitation programs. Relationships, both positive and dangerous, form over time, creating a different social dynamic. Myths and misconceptions. Many people believe jail is easier than prison, but that's not always true. Jails can be overcrowded, underfunded, and chaotic due to constant turnover. Others assume prison equals solitary confinement, but only a small portion of inmates experience that level of isolation. Another myth? That all federal prisons are cushy club feds. In reality, only a handful of low-security federal facilities are that lenient. Most are just as intense as state prisons. Legal consequences and records. Whether someone ends up in jail or prison, the consequences follow them. A jail sentence usually indicates a misdemeanor, and while still serious, it might not carry the same long-term weight as a felony. A prison sentence for a felony often means a lifetime of consequences. Difficulty finding employment, loss of voting rights in many states, and a permanent criminal record that can impact housing, education, and personal freedom. Conclusion: different places, different purposes. To the average person, jail and prison might sound like interchangeable terms, but they represent two very different parts of the justice system. Jail is the first stop, a holding place for short-term inmates or those awaiting justice. Prison is the final destination, reserved for serious offenders serving long sentences. Understanding the difference isn't just useful trivia. It helps you grasp how the criminal justice system works, who it affects, and how our society handles crime and punishment on different levels. Liked learning something new? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more fascinating cross-cultural deep dives.